Here's a quick little table topper or hot pad that you can make just using scraps of fabric and batting. It's a great project for learning about the flip and sew method. You'll also get a chance to quilt as you go. Hope you stay tuned. First, you'll want to grab a piece of batting. I'm making a hot pad for this casserole dish, so this looks like a good size. I don't have thermal batting, so I'm going to double up 2 pieces of 100% cotton batting to make sure that my table's protected underneath. These pieces don't have to be cut perfect because later on you'll be trimming this when you square up the project. You'll also need fabric for the backing and binding based on the size of your project. Grab your scrap box and look for strips that are about 1 to 3 inches wide and long enough to cover the width of your batting with 1 inch to 2 inches extra on the ends. So this piece, while it covers this batting, piece is a little bit short. And this piece has extra room to spare. You can just randomly start pulling out scraps to use, or you can start laying them out in a pleasing manner in order to get a better idea of the strip placement. Remember to take a photo so you can refer to it later. Before you get started sewing, you want to make sure that all your strips have been pressed and check to make sure that each strip has at least one straight edge. The straight edge will be a guide for your sewing. You'll be stitching these strips directly to the batting. I usually like to start sewing in the center and then work my way across to this side and then go back and finish this side. But it's not necessary. It's okay to start on one edge and then work your way all the way across. I'll start with this piece of fabric and I'm going to put it at an angle. Then the next piece of fabric that I want to use is this piece. So in order to sew these two together, I need to put right sides together and then pin. I sewed this seam using the edge of my foot as a guide. Now I had a 1/4 inch foot on my machine, so this is a 1/4 inch seam, but if you have a wider foot, that's okay. You just want to make sure that this is a straight seam going across here. Then after sewing, flip this back and press with a hot, dry iron. Because you'll be pressing on this batting, you want to make sure that this is 100% cotton bat or thermal bat, because a hot iron can melt polyester batting. Also, make note of where this strip ended up when I folded it back. You want to make sure that you clear this edge. So here I'm up 1 inch or so, but when I fold it back, it comes pretty close to the edge. Don't worry if it's just a little short. As I said earlier, eventually you're going to trim around these edges. At this point, I can take another strip and lay it out how I'd like it to look, and then I'll take and put right sides together. Now, it's not going to be perfect the way I had it looking, but instead of pinning, I can fold this back and then cut. Then I'll put right sides together, pin, stitch, and then press. Now I'm ready for my next piece. Let's see, I think I'd like it to go about here. So let me put right sides together. I can either cut this off now or leave it. I'll pin and stitch. I've sewn this in place, and now I have the option of either cutting this out, or if I don't mind the thickness, I can just leave it in there. So I'll just leave it in there for now. So I'll continue adding strips till I've covered this side. I just noticed that there's a shadow underneath here from this darker piece. So remind yourself to check for shadows because you'll want to cut out this piece. Much better. If you have a shorter strip, sometimes you can sneak that in the corners and then cover up with another strip. When I finish this side, I like to flip this around because for some reason I like going in this direction. And then I start adding my strips. After all your strips have been sewn and pressed, you're ready to trim. I like to turn it to the back and then trim off the excess. When everything's been trimmed, then I like to turn this over to the front to see if I want to trim anything else off. I made this a little bit bigger than it needed to be, so I can trim it down more. For example, if I decide I don't like this piece on the end here, I could take that off. Or if I don't like these pieces, I could take those off, and so forth. But I think I'm going to leave everything as is. But I want to check to see that this is nice and square. Looks pretty good. I have this piece of fabric for the backing. It's a little bit bigger than my topper, so I'll need to cut this down. I'll use this as my guideline. You can finish this a couple of different ways. If you want to add binding, then you'll take your back, place it face down, line up the top, and pin, and then add your binding around the edges. Or you can take your back, put right sides together, pin around the edges, and then stitch, leaving about a 3 to 4 inch space open for turning. Then turn it inside out and stitch up this closing. Hope you decide to try your hand at making one of these table toppers. They go together quickly, and it's a great project for using up your scraps. It's a lot of fun not having to worry about that perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance or cutting your pieces precisely. If you'd like more detailed instructions about sewing or finishing up this project, check out our other Flip and Sew video. I'll leave the links below. Thanks for visiting LearnHowToQuilt.com. Please like, subscribe, and share our videos with your friends. Remember, if you're trying to find us on the internet, type in LearnHowToQuilt.com. Don't forget the .com. Using the .com will get you right to our site.